Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Before we dive into today's story, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because what you're about to hear is not fiction. It's a confession from a man who watched his family crumble under the weight of one unthinkable request. Sometimes, it's not strangers who test your morals, it's the people you trust the most. They say a son's greatest desire is to make his father proud. But what if the very thing your father asks of you is the one that destroys everything you've ever believed in? I was raised in a house where my father's word was law. He was a respected man, disciplined, admired, feared in a quiet sort of way. People said he had principles, but living under his roof, it often felt more like a dictatorship. My mother? Soft-spoken, obedient, and tired. You could see it in her eyes, she'd stopped fighting years ago. And me? I was the only son, the one he pinned his hopes and expectations on. I carried them like chains. When my father retired, he grew restless. The man who once commanded boardrooms now sat in silence for hours, staring at nothing. It was during this time that his request came, one that would rip the very fabric of our family apart. He called me into his study one evening. The lights were dim, the air heavy with the smell of whiskey and old leather. He gestured for me to sit, but I stood instead. His tone was calm, too calm. "There's something I need you to do," he said, pouring himself another drink. "Something only you can handle." I thought it was about money, or business, or some family property issue. I was wrong. He leaned back in his chair, exhaled slowly, and said words I'll never forget. "Your mother wants to leave me." At first, I thought he was joking. My mother? The woman who barely spoke above a whisper? Leave him? Impossible. But he wasn't joking. "She says she's tired. That she wants peace. After all I've done." His face hardened, and then came the words that sent a chill through me. "I want you to make sure she doesn't." The way he said it, cold, deliberate, made my stomach twist. "What do you mean?" I asked cautiously. "Convince her. Remind her what she owes this family. And if she won't listen?" He paused, his eyes narrowing. "Then make her stay." I didn't respond. I couldn't. The weight of what he implied hung in the air like smoke. I left that room feeling like I'd been poisoned. My father had always been controlling, but this was something darker. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, my thoughts spinning. My mother was sleeping in the guest room again, something that had become a quiet habit over the last few years. When I looked at her face in the dim light, I didn't see rebellion. I saw exhaustion. She looked like a woman who had carried someone else's burdens for too long. And for the first time in my life, I realized something that terrified me. My father wasn't asking me to protect the family. He was asking me to continue his control. That single conversation changed everything. It was the night I stopped seeing my father as a man to admire, and started seeing him as someone I no longer recognized. After that night, nothing felt the same again. My father's words echoed in my head like a curse: family isn't built on freedom. It's built on loyalty. I hated how much space they took up inside me. The next morning, my mother was in the kitchen, making breakfast like everything was normal. Her movements were calm, almost rehearsed, as if she'd learned to hide her thoughts behind every stir of the spoon. But when our eyes met, I saw something new: fear. Not of what she'd said or done, but fear of what he might do next. I sat at the table, silent, until she placed a cup of tea in front of me. Her hands trembled slightly. "Did he talk to you last night?" she asked softly. The question hit me like a slap. I didn't expect her to know. I didn't expect her to ask. "Yes," I said cautiously. "And?" she pressed. I hesitated, unsure how much she wanted to hear. "He told me you were planning to leave," I said finally. She froze, eyes locked on mine, breath caught halfway through. Then she laughed. But it wasn't the kind of laugh that comes from joy. It was the sound of someone trying to keep from crying. "He always finds out," she whispered. Always. That single word, always, carried a lifetime of pain. For the first time, I asked the question I'd been too afraid to ask my whole life. Mom, what did he do to you? She looked away. And that silence, that long, unbearable silence, told me everything I needed to know. When she finally spoke, her voice was so soft I almost missed it. He made me believe I was lucky to have him. Even when I wasn't allowed to be myself. Even when I wasn't allowed to leave. He said love was sacrifice, but it was never his to make. I felt something inside me crack. All those years I thought my parents were just traditional, that my mother's quietness was humility. It wasn't. It was survival. Then she reached for my hand. If I leave, she said, I need to know you'll be safe. He won't forgive me if you take my side. Her words chilled me. It wasn't just fear, it was a warning. That day, I began to notice how carefully my mother moved around him. How she measured her words, how she avoided eye contact, how she smiled at the right times but never too long. It was like watching a woman performing a role she'd been forced to play for decades. One night, while my father was out, she came to my room with a small box. It was old and locked. She handed it to me without a word. Inside were letters, all written to her, all from a man whose name I didn't recognize. He was the first man I ever loved, she said. Before your father. I didn't know what to say. The letters were full of warmth, poetry, and dreams, a version of my mother I'd never known. Your father found them years ago, she continued. That's when everything changed. He made me promise I'd never speak of it again. He called it betrayal. But it was the only part of me he didn't own. I realized then that her wanting to leave wasn't sudden. It was decades of quiet pain finally breaking the surface. That night, I made a silent promise. If she wanted to go, I would help her, no matter what he said, no matter what it cost me. But what I didn't know was that my father already suspected everything, and the moment he discovered what we were planning, our family would never recover. There are moments in life that split time into before and after. That day was one of them. Before it happened, I still believed I could protect my mother. After it happened, I realized I couldn't even protect myself. It started with something small, a missing letter. My mother had taken one from the box to read before bed. I told her to hide them better, but she said he'd stopped checking her things years ago. She was wrong. That morning, my father didn't greet us. He just sat in the living room, staring at the floor, his jaw clenched so tight you could hear his teeth grind when he breathed. The letter lay open on the table, the handwriting unmistakable. My mother froze at the doorway. I remember her hand tightening around the doorknob like she was bracing for impact. You kept them, he said quietly, still not looking at her. No shouting. No anger. Just that low, calm voice that somehow felt worse than rage. After everything I've done for you, he continued, you still kept them. She tried to speak, but her voice broke. They were memories, she said softly. They were lies, he snapped. Just like you. I stepped forward, trying to diffuse the tension. Dad, please. But he turned to me, eyes blazing. You knew. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. You both lied to me, he said. Under my roof. My mother shook her head, tears streaming down her face. She didn't know everything, she whispered. This isn't her fault. That made it worse. Because to him, taking her side was betrayal, and in that moment, my mother chose me over him. He stood up so suddenly that the chair fell backward. You think you can just walk away from this family? He hissed. You think you can make me a fool in front of my own daughter? I'll never forget the way his voice cracked, not from pain, but from pride. His ego was bleeding, and he wanted someone else to feel it too. Then he looked at me again. You're just like her, he said coldly. Ungrateful. Weak. Something inside me snapped. All the fear I'd carried for years, all the silent dinners, the careful words, the watching my mother shrink into herself, it all poured out. "No, Dad," I said. "We're just tired of being afraid of you." For a moment, he just stared at me, stunned that I'd spoken back. Then he did something I'll never forget. He laughed. A slow, bitter laugh that sounded more like disbelief than amusement. "You think you're brave now?" he said. "Wait until you need me. You'll come crawling back like she did." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame shook. My mother sank to the floor, sobbing. I went to her, held her, but I was shaking too. Because even though he'd left the room, we both knew he wasn't done. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house made me jump. Around midnight, I heard him in the hallway, whispering to himself, fragments of sentences, the sound of glass clinking. I locked my door. So did my mother. The next morning, he was gone. So was the box of letters. There was a note on the kitchen table. "I built this family. And I'll decide how it ends." That was the day I realized my father wasn't just broken, he was dangerous. And I knew we had to leave, before his pride turned into something irreversible. There are some nights that never truly end, even when the sun rises. That night was one of them. It began with fear and ended with silence that felt heavier than death. After finding my father's note, my mother stopped eating. She'd sit by the window for hours, holding a rosary that had long lost its meaning. Her eyes were always distant, not watching the world outside, but something far darker within. I spent days begging her to leave. "Mom, we can go tonight," I said one evening. "I've packed a few things. We can stay with Aunt Clara until we figure out what to do." But she hesitated. "If we leave," she whispered, "he'll find us. He always finds us." It wasn't paranoia, it was experience. She'd tried once before, years ago. He brought her back. No police, no neighbors. Just quiet threats that cut deeper than any wound. But that night, something changed. She came into my room while I was pretending to sleep. Her voice trembled. "You were right," she said. "It's time." We didn't take much, a few clothes, some cash, her ID, and one photograph of us from when I was little. The plan was simple, leave while he was at his weekly poker game, catch the midnight bus, and never look back. For the first time in years, I saw something like hope flicker in her eyes. She even smiled, a small, fragile smile that made her look years younger. We waited until the clock struck 11, then crept downstairs. Every step on the wooden floor felt like it echoed across the house. I could hear my own heartbeat louder than my footsteps. When we reached the front door, my mother hesitated. "He won't let us go easily," she whispered. "He's not here, Mom," I said, gripping her hand. "Let's go." I turned the doorknob. It was locked, from the outside. That was when I knew. He'd never left. The living room light flicked on, and there he was, sitting in his chair, a half-empty bottle beside him, and the missing box of letters on the table. He looked calm. Too calm. "Going somewhere?" he asked. My mother froze. I stepped in front of her instinctively, my heart pounding. "We're leaving," I said. He chuckled. "You think you can just walk out? After everything I built? After everything I gave you?" "You didn't give us life," I said. "You took it from us." His expression darkened. "You're just like her," he said. "Ungrateful. I should have raised you to fear me, not pity me." He stood, towering over us, the man who once seemed invincible now trembling with anger and desperation. My mother's voice broke through the tension. "Please," she whispered. "Just let us go." He stared at her for a long moment, then looked away. "If you walk out that door," he said coldly, "don't ever call me your father again." My mother didn't hesitate this time. She reached for the door, forcing the lock open with shaking hands. As we stepped outside, I heard him behind us, not yelling, not threatening, just saying something that will haunt me forever. You'll both regret this. The world won't protect you the way I did. We didn't look back. We walked until our legs ached, caught the first bus out of town, and never returned. But as the city lights faded behind us, my mother began to cry, not tears of fear this time, but grief. Because in leaving him, she lost the life she'd known, even if it had been a prison. That night, I learned something painful. Freedom isn't beautiful when you have to bleed for it. It's been years since that night. Sometimes, it feels like another lifetime, a blur of pain, courage, and silence I still can't fully make peace with. But then there are moments when the past returns like it never left, in a dream, a sound, or even the way a door creaks in the quiet. My mother and I never went back. We started over in a small coastal town, quiet, anonymous, safe. She worked at a library. I took a job at a local cafe and studied at night. For the first time, we lived without fear. But freedom, it came with its own kind of loneliness. We didn't talk about him, not for months. His name became a ghost in our conversations, a shadow we agreed not to summon. But silence doesn't erase memory. One evening, about a year after we left, I received a letter. No return address. No signature. Inside was one sentence. I hope you're both proud, because you killed what was left of me. It was his handwriting. I didn't show it to my mother. She had finally begun to smile again, to laugh softly at things that once made her afraid to breathe. I burned the letter in the kitchen sink that night. I told myself it was just paper, but my hands shook the whole time. Not long after, we heard from one of my father's old colleagues. He'd fallen ill. Alone. No one came to visit. When he passed away, there was no funeral, just a quiet note from the hospital saying his body had been claimed by a distant cousin. I expected to feel something, grief, guilt, relief. But instead, I felt nothing. Just a hollow calm that scared me more than anger ever did. My mother didn't cry when I told her. She just sat by the window, staring at the sky, and whispered. He finally let us go. That night, I realized freedom doesn't always come when you run. Sometimes, it only comes when the person who held you captive, physically, emotionally, or mentally, no longer has the power to define you. Years have passed, and I've built a new life. I have friends now who don't know what I've survived. To them, I'm just quiet, maybe a little too careful, a little too observant. They don't know that silence isn't my nature. It's my armor. My mother and I are closer than ever. But every so often, she looks at me with that haunted tenderness that says, "You lost a father because I couldn't save him." And every time, I tell her the same thing. You didn't lose him, Mom. He lost us. I share this story anonymously because there are countless people, sons, daughters, spouses, still trapped in homes where control hides behind the word love. It's not easy to leave. It's not even easy to see it for what it is. But once you do, there's no going back. If my story reaches even one person who's afraid to break free, I want them to remember this. You can love someone and still choose to walk away. You can honor where you came from without living under its shadow. And sometimes, survival isn't rebellion, it's the purest form of love you'll ever give yourself. In the end, my father's unimaginable request, to make my mother stay, didn't just break our family apart. It exposed the truth that love without freedom isn't love at all. We ran not to escape him, but to find ourselves again. And though the scars remain, they remind me that we survived. In the end, my father's unimaginable request, to make my mother stay, didn't just break our family apart. It exposed the truth that love without freedom isn't love at all. We ran not to escape him, but to find ourselves again. And though the scars remain, they remind me that we survived. This story is inspired by true events and told for mature audiences. Names and details have been changed to protect privacy. Viewer discretion is advised, some emotions may feel too real to ignore. If this story touched your heart, please take a second to subscribe, leave a comment, and share your thoughts below. Has your idea of family ever been tested in ways you never imagined? Your story might help someone else find their courage too. Stay strong, stay kind, and never let anyone make you forget your worth. Until next time, thank you for listening.